All right, and what I think is one of the most ridiculous trades I've ever seen. And actually, it leads me to just kind of conclude in one thing, and I'll give you guys my take at the very end. But first, let's go through all the elements of this trade. Jaylen Brown traded to the Philadelphia 76ers from the Boston Celtics. In the division, in the conference, to a competitor. They just played in the playoffs. The Sixers bounced the Celtics. I mean, just the conditions are unbelievable. The guy he was traded for, and Jaylen Brown getting traded for Paul George, who's hardly ever available, unreliable, very old in NBA terms, right, when you think about his age. Nothing personal. I'm not an ageist. It's just a young man's game. And he's very injured, and all he cares about is podcasting, and he's just not a contributing impact player at this point of his career. And then the picks, I mean, yeah, they got a couple of picks, but it's not really that meaningful. Anyways, the story that's going around is that the Celtics are trying to justify this trade by saying analytics says that, Jaylen Brown just isn't that important of a player to them. And that even a guy like Derek White, they said this, Derek White is more meaningful, impactful analytically. So let's destroy that and let's prove how the Celtics, Brad Stevens, looks like a clown and he wants you to believe and buy these Wolf tickets. He's selling Wolf tickets, and if you're foolish, you'll believe him. But let's just look at the analytics, shall we? All right, Derek White is a fantastic player. He has the ability to score the basketball a little bit. He can rebound a little bit. He could distribute. He's a good perimeter player. His points per game last season compared to the previous one, up by 0.1 points per game. Jason Tatum played less than 1/3 of the NBA season, and all he could do was an increase of 0.1 points. The rebounds per game fell by 0.1 per game. The assists per game went up by about a half assist a game. The field goal percentage dropped off by almost 5%. The three-point percentage regressed by almost 6%. His free throw percentage did increase substantially from 84% to 90%. Not that meaningful for a guy who doesn't take many free throws. In terms of his playmaking, his shooting, those kind of things, not really all that much of an improvement year over year, even with the absence of a very impactful high-usage player like Jason Tatum. In fact, his shooting slump for the entirety of the season was pretty substantial. His defensive value is obviously very good, but that doesn't change all that much when you think about individual defensive efforts. In the playoffs, Derek White was an absolute playoff dropper. His three-point shooting dropped even more. His field goal shooting dropped even more. His points per game average went down by 50%, especially when you compare the other playoff runs they had, including a championship run. There is not a shred of analytics that proves his improvement or his analytical value over Jaylen Brown. But let's look at Jaylen Brown, who was a top 5 MVP candidate last season. Because of the absence of Jason Tatum, he got to shine. He averaged 6 more points per game. He averaged over a rebound more per game. His assist total went up as well. And his field goal percentage did drop a little bit, likely because of the volume. But he was the 4th leading scorer in the entire NBA. He basically replaced Jason Tatum as a top elite NBA scorer across the entirety of the league, all players considered. His efficiency was fine, although it did dip. That would be expected. He obviously has a massive responsibility on defense, and his shot creation was likely at the forefront for the team without any type of gravity towards any other players to truly be threats. His playmaking also improved. He had a career high in assists, and he really just did a nice job of playing good basketball, and it proved in the MVP voting. There is not a shred of evidence, proof, statistical data that indicates that Derek White is a more important player analytically to the team than Jaylen Brown. So it doesn't really matter what Brad Stevens says, what the quote-unquote analytics say. They actually don't prove even the claim in any way, shape, or form. This trade to move on from Jaylen Brown was a personal decision. The Celtics are removing a player who they perceive to be a potential problem for them. He provides the risk of friction. He says things that are a little bit outspoken compared to the typical NBA player. Jaylen Brown is not the typical NBA player. He's a player who has goals. He's a player that has ambitions for him as a player personally, but also for his teams. I think the bigger issue is the fact that Jaylen Brown presents social awareness, which some teams can view as threatful. And when you think about the salary cap and the CBA rules, the Celtics made a calculation. There's risk with this type of player, and he needs to make a lot of money. Maybe it's time to return some value. Folks, they didn't get 50% of what he was worth. This is an MVP player. This is a top player, arguably one of the best players in the league from a two-way perspective. The ability to score, help others score, the ability to defend the perimeter, and his position across multiple positions. They moved on from Jaylen Brown for personal reasons. There is not a basketball decision to be made about Jaylen Brown. Any team would be lucky to have him. The Celtics are going to have hell dealing with Jaylen Brown as a Philadelphia 76er. This is going to create massive appeal. This is going to create incredible storylines and narratives. And I think Jaylen Brown's the type of player who is going to feast on the opportunity to get back at a team that seemingly was moving on from a player, not because of basketball, but because of personal reasons. I don't think the basketball people, decision makers at Boston, supported Jaylen Brown in what he does across all elements of his life. They wanted him quiet. They wanted him without any type of things that could be said in the media. His teammates didn't hate him. They adored him. They respected him. He helped carry the team and make them 10 times more competitive than anyone thought that they were going to be. This was not a basketball decision. This was a personal decision. Proof, look at what he was traded for. Look at where they traded him. And look at how the whole thing played out. Brad Stevens looks and sounds like a fool for trying to justify trading Jaylen Brown. I think what he's doing is protecting the owners who said we need to move on from this guy. It's a personal decision. Jaylen Brown was moved because of personal perspectives by the ownership group. I don't even think Brad Stevens didn't like him. I think he actually really liked Jaylen Brown. I think he really respected Jaylen Brown, because what you guys got to remember about Brad Stevens, he was his coach. He was an NBA, it was an NBA relationship, coach-player relationship. He didn't want to move on from Jaylen Brown. This came from up top. Jaylen Brown, thoughtless, brainless player, and the ownership group doesn't want to deal with that. That's why he was traded for peanuts. That's why he was traded at all. One of the worst trades I've ever seen. The Celtics deserve whatever they get. That ownership group, I hope they never get a championship. Sorry, Celtics fans, but that ownership group, they can go to hell.